Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Oldham County Fiscal Court. I'm David Vogel, Judge Executive. Happy to have you here today for our meeting on June 20th, 2023. A few minutes ago, before the meeting started, we were able to present the Baptist Hospital Foundation with a check for $250,000. That's the first of four contributions that will be made to the Baptist Healthcare Foundation over the next 3 years, and for a total of $1 million, 4 different checks that'll go for mental health services in Oldham County, and particularly the new wing they're adding to the hospital for inpatient psychiatric care. So we're proud to be able to do that prior to the start of our meeting here. So now I'd like to ask everyone who's with us now to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tara Long, please call the roll.
Magistrate Likens.
Here.
Magistrate Tice.
Here.
Magistrate Woosley.
Here.
Magistrate Jeffries.
Here.
Magistrate Hounds.
Here.
Magistrate Hawkins.
Here.
Magistrate Dye.
Present.
Magistrate Logston.
Here.
Judge Vogel.
Here. Having all members of the fiscal court present, this meeting is now in session. Is there a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Are there any additions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Now I'll ask Tara to please read the minutes from our last meeting.
The Oldham County Fiscal Court convened at a regular meeting at 2:01 p.m. with Judge Vogel, County Attorney Barry Baxter, and the following magistrates in attendance: Likens, Tice, Woosley, Jeffries, Hounds, Hawkins, Dye, and Logston. Motion made by Magistrate Dye and seconded by Magistrate Hounds to approve the agenda. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Likens and seconded by Magistrate Jeffries to approve the minutes of May 16th. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Jeffries and seconded by Magistrate Woosley to approve the minutes of May 24th. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Hounds and seconded by Magistrate Woosley to approve the minutes of June 2nd. Motion carried 8-1. Magistrate Likens abstained. There was no public comment. Clint Cahoe, President of Baptist Health LaGrange, presented on upcoming behavioral health services that will be available in Oldham County. Motion made by Judge Vogel and seconded by Magistrate Logston to award Baptist Health $250,000 each year over the course of 4 years for a total of $1 million. Sorry, bad math. Discussion followed. Motion carried 8-1. Magistrate Dye voted no. Motion made by Magistrate Jeffries and seconded by Magistrate Hounds to approve the payment of the payables as submitted. Motion carried unanimously. Jim Urban and Brian Vogel of Planning and Zoning presented a first reading ordinance KOC 23-920-343, repealing and replacing sections of the existing Oldham County Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. The second reading and public hearing is scheduled for June 20th. Tina Schaaf, Director of Human Resources, presented for a first reading Ordinance KOC 23-200-370, amending Chapter 2, Chapter 3, and Chapter 4 in the Administrative Code. The second reading and public hearing is scheduled for June 20th. Judge Vogel presented a second reading and a public hearing proposed Ordinance KOC 23-220345, relating to the annual budget and appropriations for the fiscal year 23-24. There being no public comment, the public hearing was closed. Motion made by Magistrate Hounds and seconded by Magistrate Logston to adopt Ordinance KOC 23-220-345, relating to the annual budget and appropriations for the fiscal year 23-24 as submitted. Discussion followed. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Woosley and seconded by Magistrate Tice to approve the standing order for the pre-approved recurring expenses for fiscal year 23-24 as submitted. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Jeffries and seconded by Magistrate Hawkins to award Morton the bid for salt fiscal year '24 at a rate of $96.46 a ton for 2,200 tons with an obligated amount of 1,000 tons. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Hounds and seconded by Magistrate Logston to authorize Judge Vogel to sign the contract amendments as submitted. Discussion followed. Motion made by Magistrate Tice to remove OCPD from contract. Discussion followed. Motion to remove OCPD from the contract was withdrawn by Magistrate Tice. Original motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Jeffries and seconded by Magistrate Hounds to authorize Judge Vogel to sign the agreement, House Bill 1, jail arraignment equipment as submitted. Discussion followed. Motion carried unanimously. Motion was made by Magistrate Jeffries and seconded by Magistrate Woosley to release $60,975 for erosion control surety for reserves of Leah Spirit, Section 1 as submitted. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Tyson, seconded by Magistrate Hounds to release $21,112 performance surety for Heather Ridge, Section 4 as submitted. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Woosley and seconded by Magistrate Jeffries to take the roads within Heather Ridge, Section 4, into Oldham County Road Maintenance System as submitted. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Jeffries and seconded by Magistrate Tice to release $129,325 in performance bond for the reserves of Deer Fields, Section 2, as submitted. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Woosley and seconded by Magistrate Tice to take the roads within the reserves of Deer Field, Section 2, into the Oldham County Road Maintenance System as submitted. Motion carried unanimously. Motion was made by Magistrate Hounds and seconded by Magistrate Woosley to hire Daniel Pena as a park laborer at the rate of $18 an hour, effective 6/7. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Hounds and seconded by Magistrate Woosley to hire Adam Vincent as telecommunicator 2 at a rate of $28.24 an hour, effective 6/26. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Logston and seconded by Magistrate Jeffries to reappoint Gary Hardy to the Oldham Chamber of Economic Development Board with a term to expire 6/30/26. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Woosley and seconded by Magistrate Tice to appoint Kevin Vaughn to the LaGrange Fire Protection District Board with a term to expire. And this is a correction from what was stated in the meeting. The term should expire on 6/30/26. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Jeffries and seconded by Magistrate Logston to reappoint Joy Tabler to the Pee Wee Valley Fire Protection District Board with a term to expire 6/30/26. Motion carried 8-1. Magistrate Hounds abstained. Motion made by Magistrate Hounds and seconded by Magistrate Woosley to reappoint Tony Ising to the North Oldham Fire Protection District Board with a term to expire 6/30/26. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Jeffries and seconded by Magistrate Hounds to reappoint Dennis Dibble to South Oldham Fire Protection District Board with a term to expire 6/30/26. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Woosley and seconded by Magistrate Hounds to reappoint William Hancock to the Westport Fire Protection Board with a term to expire 6/30/26. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Likens and seconded by Magistrate Woosley to reappoint Joe Dedman to the Henry County Water District Number 2 Board with a term to expire 6/30/26. Motion carried unanimously. Motion made by Magistrate Dye and seconded by Magistrate Hounds to adjourn the meeting. Motion carried unanimously, and the meeting adjourned at 3:57 p.m.
You heard the reading of our minutes from June 6th. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Are there any corrections?
Judge, do we need to do anything formally to accept that date change on the appointment?
We can. Won't hurt anything. You want to make that motion?
We originally made the motion for it to expire 5/31/27, but it should have been 6/30/26. It's
And,
corrected in the minutes.
Right, corrected in the minutes, and the motion, the appointment to Kevin Vaughn to the LaGrange Fire Board will be to 6/30/26. Okay, that's a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? I think we had a motion, didn't
Yeah, I think if we do that with the correction, that covers it all.
we? Right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Time now, excuse me, for public comment. It's time during our meeting when anyone who would like to address the fiscal court is able to do so. We ask you to keep your remarks to 4 minutes or less. And please state your name and address.
My name is Jim Allen, 1416 Oldham View Drive. This is a very simple one. Whenever we have these announcements in Oldham Air about documents and things that are coming before the board, before the fiscal court, it's a little hard to. Is it off? Here, do I have to start over?
Go ahead, yeah.
It's still difficult to find from the announcement in Oldham Air where the documents are. And your staff will tell you, I've called over the last couple of years many times trying to find these documents. And I just made a very simple suggestion. There used to be in the main page for Oldham County a little box on the upper left hand where you could poke and it would give you all the current documentation that's under consideration. I don't think you need to continue to work on updating that front page every time you do it. But it would be helpful, I think, to add the actual the rest of that URL, to add after oldhamcountykentucky.gov/add fiscal court information, because that'll get you right there and there won't be any question for anybody looking for that information. So it's just a suggestion based on some frustration, so
All right.
I hope it helps.
All right, good suggestion. Thank you, Jim.
I like that.
And I think we can probably accomplish that easy enough. All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the fiscal court? And happy to welcome.
Overhead projector?
Pardon?
Could we turn on an overhead projector?
Overhead projector, is it on? Do we need it? Happy to welcome back the former magistrate, Bob Leslie. Bob, nice to see
Good
you
afternoon.
today. All right. And,
I'm here to speak about an issue, and it's reference to the
something went out.
fiber that's being
Hold on a
put up.
second, Bob. Do we have anything up there?
It's on.
Well, it's not on our screens and it's not up above, so there you go.
See, that's
Okay.
because I hadn't put anything up.
Oh,
yet.
okay, all right.
I will keep this as brief as possible, but I'll probably go over the 4 minutes. My point will be succinct, and I think everybody who's here needs to understand a little bit about utility work. I've been in the utility field for almost 50 years. I've worked from Seattle, Washington, all the way to the Virgin Islands. People pay me when I fly in an airplane, so it's not like I don't have any knowledge or a small amount of knowledge. I have a vast amount of knowledge in the utility field. There are large companies that are involved in tree trimming for utilities. Asplund is one, Davy is one, Towns is another. I've had training at Asplund in the Pennsylvania plant, so I have a great deal of knowledge of this. And when they do this, they usually work for a company like Kentucky Utilities or LG&E on a 3 to 5 year contract. At my particular place, I purchased the property and signed an agreement with utilities that they could trim my trees and remove any trees that could fall into the lines and disrupt the issue. I have no problem with that. So since I've had the property, they've done this anywhere between 6 and 12 times, and I've never had an issue. But then again, the people who do this are professionals, and I have no problem with that. I also work with people in the field that also do this, so I know that very well. I know that you have Star Construction doing this on the Oldham County fiber network. And I think it's important that you kind of have some idea of what's going on. You may get calls from some of your constituents as to what's going on and probably should know some idea of why or why not something is done. Kentucky Utilities and Louisville Gas and Electric are a very large company. It's worth $7.6 billion, which is a significant amount. If you look at a company such as Asplund, they're very large too. They trim in the United States and overseas. They're worth somewhere between $3 and $4 billion. So the training that I received from them was significant, and they're not the only ones that I've worked with. My neighbor saw the people trimming on the trees on her property, and I have some pictures of that. She was disturbed, and she talked to some of the people to see, in fact, who were some of these people that were cutting the trees on her property. Some of the names are this, and I'll put it here. Brad Nelms, Robbie Bulla, and you can see the area codes there. So she did a reverse lookup to see exactly who are these people. So Brad Nelms, who is he? He's from Bristol, Virginia, and he's involved in single-family home construction. He's one of the people cutting down trees in this area. This is a federal document on his right to use vehicles over 10,000 pounds on the highways. Please note that he doesn't have a chemical license involved in this. I'll get to that point. I checked with the Agricultural Department to see if TBC Construction, as in his company, has a license. They do not. There has been a significant amount of herbicides that have been done on my property as well as neighbor's property. This is an example of a systemic herbicide. Once it's sprayed on the foliage, it kills it all the way down to the root. It will never recover. It's completely dead. One popular one that can be purchased by the public is 2,4-D. It's a lesser version of 2,4,2-D, which was Agent Orange, but it's an extremely effective plant killer. This is in my neighborhood. This is on my property. As you can see, the arrow that I have at the top, that's the fiber line that the construction company put in. You can see all the foliage down below that goes to a creek and has been sprayed with a defoliant, has killed everything. This is another one in my yard. This is not running along the road. There was no reason for that to be done whatsoever. You can see significant damage to the plants. Another individual who she got her name was Robbie Bulla. He's out of Tennessee. He's also a home builder. Interesting that home builders are cutting the right-of-way in Oldham County. Just so you know, AT&T is a very large company. They're significantly larger than the $7.6 billion worth of Kentucky Utilities. They're a $114 billion company. I'm kind of guessing that if Kentucky Utilities can hire a tree trimmer that's truly knows what they're doing, AT&T could have also. Two other individuals that were there, Eugene Spear, when she did a reverse lookup, he appeared to work with AT&T. I would say it does appear as if he knew what was going on. I did not talk to him. As I had stated, Townsend Tree. Townsend Tree is a professional company. They've been around many, many years. They work in over 30 states. Power line clearance is a special field that requires immense amount of knowledge of trees, skill in the implementation, therefore, of that. Their goal is to go unnoticed. For the numerous times that LG&E or Kentucky Utilities has had the right-of-way at my particular property done, they come in, they do the job, they leave, and you don't notice what they did. This is important to note. This is from Davy Tree. Davy Tree is also a very, very large company. They've been around since 1880. And the question would be, how much can a tree be cut without killing it? One cut can immediately kill your tree. Pruning incorrectly or too often can. If a tree repeatedly loses too much of its canopy at one time, it can become weak or even die from the stress. That's why you should not trim more than 25% of the tree's canopy at one time. The purpose of that will become abundantly clear as I show you pictures of what's transpired on my property and my neighbor's property. My neighbor's property belongs to the Posts.
Judge, we're going to add more time.
Kurt Poth worked under John Fendley. He was assistant county attorney.
Hey, Bob, hang on a second. You've exceeded the 4 minutes. I'll make a motion that we extend Magistrate Leslie as much time as he needs to make his presentation. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay.
Thank you so much. This is also a shot at my neighbor's property. It's between the two. Part of it on the lower right side is my property, and going into the post property, you can see where I put an arrow on there. That's the new fiber line, okay? And you can see just to the left of the utility pole, you can see a tree. Over half of the tree has been removed. Now, a professional tree trimming company would have trimmed the tree so that it would not interfere with the line. This was a devastating cut. This tree is dying now because over half of the tree has been removed. There's no replacing of this tree. And there's other trees that she has on her property that's also dead and dying. In about the middle of the lower portion of the screen, you'll see a tree where they just cut the top off and left like 6 feet of it standing out of the ground. And you'll see other trees that they've done the same thing. Just so you might know, elected officials of Kentucky, if a person cuts down or damages an owner's tree and the person's liable to the owner for triple the value of the damages. I'm not opposed to the trees on my property being trimmed. It's a necessity because it keeps them from interrupting your power if they fall or damage something else. It's a necessary issue, and that's why reliable companies like Davy, Asplin, Townsend, Wright, and others are doing this. These are all pictures of damage to my property. These trees are dead, but they left them. These trees they cut up and they left on my property. These trees are also they killed.
Can you push that picture up, sir?
Sure can. All these pictures are different. All these spans of approximately 400 to 500 feet. Kevin Nuss did contact them about clearing us up. This is what they've left after they've completed my job. As I said, every one of these is different. This is a job of home builders, it seems to be, on my property.
Bob, can you push that last one up too?
Sure. As you can see, actually around here, you can see the stump sitting up in the middle, and you can see the ground around the base of that. That's been killed by a herbicide also. That's why the trees are browning out. This is a picture that my neighbor took. If you see in the middle section of the picture on the right-hand side, you'll see what seems to be a dusty area. And you'll see a lot of limbs on the lower section of the picture. Those are limbs that they cut off of the trees on my neighbor's property. And they're using a chipper to dispose of everything on my property. I didn't realize my property was a county dump. This is them again. As you can see, they've left hazards all over the place. No professional tree trimmer would leave stumps standing up. That's a serious hazard. I have children on the street. If they go walking through there and trip over many, as you can see, all the numerous trees that they cut down and put in a pile, every one of those stumps sticking out, if a child goes across that, falls, gets hurt, that's a serious issue. I'm not very pleased with AT&T on any level, but this is a minimum of what I'd like. All stumps need to be taken to the ground. All debris from the cutting or the spraying needs to be removed. All trees, shrubs, all the dying material needs to be removed. The area needs some types of ground cover so that it complies with the Clean Water Act. With the killing of all the plant material, it will all wash to the creek. Some of you may recall when a tree trimming company sprayed all the foliage on 524 going down to Westport, it was washing the road out. A significant cost was done to repair it because it was washing the road literally away. The goal is the same professional tree as Townsend tree and go unnoticed. This is obviously a project that is noticed. This is inexcusable. I did get an email from Mr. Deely, I believe that's how his name is pronounced. I wanted to know who did this. He did not tell me. And he put me off to Star Construction. I would encourage everybody to go and look at reviews of Star Construction. I think you very easily see they have a habit of doing damage to people's property. It's not very hard to see. They're based out of Knoxville, Tennessee. That's probably why some of the people that they've hired come from Piney Flats, which is north of Knoxville. Bristol is just 15 miles from the same area. I would guess they know each other. I don't know for certain or not. I have made a criminal complaint on this. I intend to go further and prosecute these if the county attorney will do so. And I'm not very pleased. But I've also made a call to the Division of Water. Everyone in the county pays a fee because of groundwater wash-off and things of that nature. This is a prime example of why you charge every household in Oldham County for that. This is an egregious issue. No one would ever do this to somebody else's property. These are people who did it on purpose, and it's not forgivable. So please pass that on to Mr. Deely. If there's an attorney who wants to contact me about taking this further, I'd be more than happy to hear them. And I think that's my presentation.
Do we know who Mr. Deely is? I'm not sure who he is.
Brad Deely, lead construction engineering for Kentucky and Tennessee or AT&T.
Okay.
He's the lead on who's doing this project in Oldham County.
All right.
If you look into complaints, just out of the heck of it, this is one that's relatively recent. It's not any different than most of the others. The local office of STAR has repeatedly violated easement and permit terms in regards to my property and refuses to take accountability for it. If you go and look STAR up, I think you'll find the same results and more for wherever they go. I think everybody here needs to know that. They have the right to trim trees, but professional tree trimmers trim trees, not home builders. In Louisville, Kentucky, we have the Louisville Home Builders Association, and they hire plumbers and electricians and masons and carpenters, and they build houses. They don't cut down trees in the right-of-way or in an easement. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Bob. These are disturbing pictures, to say the least. I'm very upset to hear this. Would someone get Kevin Nuss for me, please? I don't know. Can someone call Kevin? Sheriff, will you go find Kevin? Thank you for bringing this to our attention. This is not the expansion of broadband fiber throughout the county is an important goal of the fiscal court. We certainly have not seen this type of presentation before. Find it very upsetting. And we're going to have a meeting tomorrow with AT&T. Actually, the timing is such that they will be here tomorrow. We'll be bringing this up tomorrow, and I agree there's no excuse for what we see there. It looks terrible, and I'm very, very disturbed to see that. Yes, sir. And Kevin, we've just had a presentation from Magistrate Leslie here. Do you see him? Will you go call Mr. Philly, tell him we would want tree trimming to stop immediately today until we have a further discussion about it?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So again, I'm Jim Allen. I'm the this time the president of Crystal Lake Association, or club, at 1416 Oldham View Drive. I just want to pile on to what Bob said. I've been bringing this up at the road committee occasionally because, and I think our problem was KU, maybe not AT&T, but they came and they sprayed all these trees. We didn't even know about it. They didn't tell anybody. And then all of a sudden, all the trees died. And everybody's trying to figure out what killed the trees. And the problem is they not only destroyed a lot of the vegetation that hid one property from another, right? But they didn't tell us what the chemical was. How were we supposed to deal with the getting rid of all the dead wood? Whether it was safe to touch in a day or a month or a year or nothing. So I multiple times have made an official request for KU to tell us what they've done. I've heard nothing. So I'd like to pile in on what Bob said, that it's not a good situation. Again, I'm not sure it's AT&T, but it's done quite widely.
Okay. Not exactly sure what the answer is to this right now, but we're going to find out. And this, in regard to KU, they are managed by the Public Service Commission, and the level of authority the Oldham County Fiscal Court has over KU activity in the county, where they have easements on all of the properties that they're trimming, may be marginal, our ability to influence them. But we'll find out. And certainly sorry to see what I just saw in the members' report. So we're excited about having broadband services throughout the county. That fiber optic network, people are thanking us repeatedly for getting it to their neighborhood, and thrilled about what's coming, but we're not thrilled about what we saw right there as far as the tree trimming goes. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the fiscal court? Seeing no one, I'm going to close public comment and go on to the next item on our agenda, and that's a presentation by the Oldham County Conservation District. And I'm not sure if your presentation goes hand in glove with what we just saw, but I'm sure it was something that you're concerned about soil, correct?
Password.
Happy news, okay.
It's on the screen there. Password's on.
And we'll have to ask you to bring your microphone down and speak into the microphone. Thank you.
Judge, before they start, I was talking to Magistrate Jeffries. He's been a part of this for 39 years until this year. So.
Right.
Right.
And Judge, may I just quickly
Right. You'd
introduce
like
them?
to introduce them?
Sure.
Correct. Go ahead.
We've got Mary Lowry today. She's chairman of the Oldham County Conservation District. We've got Bert Pearson. He is the vice chair of the Conservation District. And Dr. Perry Thomas is the new district program coordinator. So I'd like to officially welcome them to court today and look forward to your all's presentation.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Should I push this? Okay. Yeah? Okay. Well, thank you all very much for having us. And Kevin, we miss you, but thank you for serving on fiscal court. And thanks to all of you for funding us every year. We present our budget, but I don't know that we've ever formally told you who we are and what we do. So thank you for the introductions. We're very excited to have Perry Thomas as our program coordinator. And of course, Bert and I have been on the board for a lot of years, but not as long as Boyd Johnson or Kevin. Conservation districts. Conservation districts were established by FDR during the Dust Bowl in the late 1930s. Every county in the U.S. has one. Kentucky, for whatever reason, has 121, even though we have 120 counties. Our board is comprised of 7 supervisors and our program coordinator. Some of our programs are, one is our Pollinator Habitat Cost Share program. This spring, what we do is we do a cost share with people that want to do pollinator beds at their home. A lot of people in subdivisions, some people on farms. We give them up to $150 match for the pollinator beds. This spring, we did 21 so far. We've done a total of 60 in 5 years. We've also partnered with the Friends of Curry's Fork to maintain the Main Street pollinator garden in LaGrange. We're also going to create a pollinator garden at our office in Buckner. Our tree giveaway. Our tree giveaway has been hugely popular every year. We give away saplings. Last year we were at the History Center. This year we were at the fabulous Spring Park Pavilion. Thank you. We gave away 2,450 this year, and as at all of our events, we also had partners that tabled and talked about their programs, and we talked about signing up for our programs and gave out lots of information. And I think we were out of trees by about 10:30. We also partner with UK Extension and do soil testing vouchers. To date, we've given out paid for 309 vouchers for soil samples testing to date. Last year, we did 312, so we're ahead of ourselves. And as with our pollinator program, we're on track for our best year to date. Our geobin composting, we've partnered with the Recycling Center, the library, and volunteers to give away composting bins after the applicant has done our educational program. Most of it's backyard composting. We've had 388 participants that have gone through our training, and we've given away about 300 bins thus far. We hope to do more with yard waste and leaves, etc. Our rain barrels. This was a hugely popular program we just did. We partnered with the Recycling Center, and we have lots of bins there. We had more people sign up than we had barrels, and the barrels cost $153. We gave them away, or we paid $50 of that through a grant, so it cost everybody $103. And we also have one at our office if anyone would like to see what they look like. Our annual banquet and awards ceremony. Good, better. Was at City Place this year. And our annual banquet is always a highlight for us in the community as we give away our prizes for the Jim Clayport and writing contest, which is only in Kentucky. I've learned only Kentucky conservation districts do that, as well as our scholarship and conservation awards. And again, we're joined by our partners who tabled.
Step back just a little bit.
Our partners who tabled, and we also played cornhole with the kids. These are some of the kids and adults that got our awards, and we also this year got a giant check that we are able to use. You can't cash it, but it looks cool. Okay. We have a cost share program and environmental grants, 75-25 programs, what we call EQIP, that help local farmers. And we have money up to about $20,000 that goes through the conservation district and then benefits our farmers and people in the Oldham County community. We also, thanks to you all, have $7,500 grant for the dead animal removal program. At the farmers market, we joined our local farmers and artisans for opening day of the LaGrange Farmers Market. And we celebrated Earth Day by giving away 200 plus water bottles and promoting composting and raising awareness about the importance of planting native species. We also are looking forward to several things we're implementing with our programs. We're going to start administering the CAPE and YAPE programs for the Ag Development Board, which Farm Bureau did before. And about $65,000 plus is available to Oldham County, so that will flow through the Conservation District Board and go to producers up to $5,000 per person. And we also look forward to expanding our support of the Curry's Creek watershed in supporting action steps recommended in the watershed plan, including providing watershed education and outreach. So this is some of what we do, and this is who we are, and we thank you guys for your support. And any questions?
Does anybody have any questions for the Conservation District?
Thank you. We hope to see you at some of our events, and come by our office anytime. Thank you.
Planted
Now-
about 40 trees over the 10 years
did?
or so we've been there. And
Yeah. How big? Send us pictures.
some of them are huge. I mean, they're 10
So-
feet tall now. So
So the tree giveaway, there were saplings.
Yeah.
And we have people that have gotten them for years and bring pictures of real trees that were saplings when they got them. So it's very heartwarming.
Judge, just one thing I'd like to add. Mary, thank you all very much for what you do, and I know we're excited about you all taking over the ag development funds. Like you said, $65,000 comes to Oldham County, and I think that'll help help a lot of folks all over the county or whatever. So if anybody has any questions about that or any of the programs, contact Perry and or you or whatever, or the board, and you all meet once a month at 6:30 in the morning. So, and
Yeah,
it's all
except,
open
except when
meetings.
Bert does fish fries, and then we meet
Right.
at 6:30 at night.
Thank you all very much.
Are you still located on Jefferson Street here?
No. We're
I
in
thought-
Buckner, behind the high school.
Okay, Buckner, behind the high school.
Buckner Cross, what's Buckner Crossing? 1002 Buckner Center Drive.
Right, I thought you had moved. I hadn't been to the new location yet. Okay, great. I have been there in the morning at 6:30 to swear in some board members in the past, and 6:30 is, it's early, but I'm always happy to go there. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming today and bringing us up to date. The next item on today's agenda has to do with our county administration. We have bills to pay, and when we're ready, we'll take a motion to approve the bills.
Judge, I'll move that we approve the previously paid bills, or the payables, payables.
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion about anything in the bills this time? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Anyway. Budget transfers, Melissa Horn.
Okay, as of Friday afternoon, we need budget transfers of $694,091 to cover budget lines where there is a shortfall.
All right. Does anyone have any question regarding the transfers?
Judge, we had talked about the transfers during the Finance Committee, and it was approved by the Finance Committee at our meeting earlier today.
All right, I'll accept that as a motion to approve. Is there a second?
second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now surplus property, Melissa.
Okay, I have three items transfers on the brain, to surplus, and I guess because there are three different methods of disposal, we'll take them separately.
Yes.
Okay. The first one is a truck from the road department. We call it truck number 2. It's a 2005 Ford F-250. We would like to surplus that to scrap.
Judge, I'll make the motion that we surplus the 2005 Ford F-250 to scrap.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
The next one is the Jeep Liberty from the engineering department. It is also a 2005, I'm sorry. We would like to surplus this to Gov Deals for an online auction.
Judge, I'll move to recommend that we sell that vehicle or put it on the online auction.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
And the final one is the 1987 Caterpillar Road Grader. We would like to surplus this for future trade-in value of $14,000 to Boyd Cat.
And Judge, that came before the road committee, and I'd like to move that we accept that we will take the credit from Boyd Cat in the amount of $14,000 that we can use to either pay for parts or service on some of our equipment. So I'll move that.
Second.
Judge, I have a question about that.
Discussion on that, a question on that, Magistrate Hawkins?
Okay, so you said 14,000. Here it says 87,000. Can someone explain
That was
that?
the original price.
Oh,
purchase
the
price.
87 was the original, and then, but we'll get 14K credit.
We bought it in 87.
Yeah, and then Do we have the next piece of equipment picked out already?
No, we're just going to use that, I think that credit for parts on any of the equipment that the county has through Caterpillar or, any service that we would require, that the Caterpillar would do. That credit will go to help pay for some of that.
Okay, and so we have a credit with who then? Remind me.
With
Boyd
Boyd
Cat.
With
Cat.
Boyd, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, I've got a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Under community business, we have the second reading for our public hearing for zoning ordinance amendments.
You had it.
And we'll ask Brian to come forward with that. Brian Fogel. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Chris, where's Urban?
Is Tina going to present this? Oh, she does the next one. The administrative code.
This is going to be a public hearing, so if there's anyone here today who would like to speak for or in opposition to any of the recommendations, you'll have an opportunity to do so a little bit later.
It has to be done at podium. I'll try to sneak up and change it. Okay.
Okay, go ahead,
Okay,
Brian.
thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, Brian Fogel, Assistant Administrator with Oldham County Planning Development, here to participate in the second reading of updates to the zoning ordinance, specifically the sections that are listed on your screen right now, addressing private clubs and event venues, agritourism buildings, golf driving ranges, school capacity standards, and solar energy systems. I've been here for about 6 months. These updates to the zoning ordinance have actually been ongoing since November of 2020. And just right there, you can see the number of times that the Planning Commission Study Review Committee has met to discuss these in depth. They've had guest speakers. I can tell you the facts of those. Magistrate Jeffries could probably give you the real background to it because he was chairperson of the Planning Commission prior to his role as magistrate. The Planning Commission has heard this on 3 different occasions: in November of 2021, April of 2022, and then March of this year. And now we're before the fiscal court. So if you follow the arrow over to here, this is the step that we're at right now. Now, because Oldham County has a joint planning commission with the Crestwood City Council, LaGrange City Council, and Pewee Valley City Council as a joint planning commission, after you all approve the changes to the zoning ordinance, our next steps will be going to Crestwood City Council and LaGrange City Council and the Pewee Valley City Council to get their consideration for updating the zoning ordinance. So the format we have been utilizing, and we'll do it this afternoon, and Magistrate Tice likes when we use the page numbers, so the page numbers have not changed from what you guys have received, so we all know what we're referring to if there's a question or a discussion. Anything that is in a red text is an addition, and anything that has a red strike through is a deletion. The first item we're going to go over are private clubs and event venues. And what we've done here with the private clubs and event venues through all the meetings and discussions that have taken place is that we have defined what a private club and event venue are, because they weren't defined in our zoning ordinance previously. We've established where they're permitted either as a permitted use by right or requiring someone who's interested in establishing one of those clubs to go get a conditional use from the appropriate Board of Adjustments. And then we've also established some minimum development standards that both the permitted and conditional use approved private clubs and event venues would have to adhere by. So on this table here, you've got your zoning district, and then in the middle, you've got what the zoning ordinance currently says. And for the most part, the zoning ordinance currently says if you want to do a private club or an event venue, with the exception of just a couple zoning districts in the C3 or C4, you have to go get a conditional use from our Board of Adjustments. The reality is a private club or an event venue really is non-residential. It's a commercial type use. So what the Planning Commission is recommending, anything that is office, commercial, or industrial, it would be a permitted use. But if you're going to propose a private event venue or a club in something that's zoned agricultural or residential, you would still be required to go to the board and get their approval with the normal public hearing and notice that we would follow with any conditional use request. That table you all just looked at is a summation of this right here. The development standards for any of the private clubs or event venues, whether it's a permitted use or a conditional use, are listed here. We already had development standards for the conditional uses, which is why you see this text here in black, and then addition to a very specific reference to the landscaping portion of the zoning ordinance instead of just a general statement. And then the definition of what a private club is and a definition of what an event venue are. Judge, I don't know if you want me to continue to go forward or take...
No, we'll see if anybody has any comments or questions on this section. All right,
Okay.
apparently not. Go forward, continue on.
All right. So the next section that the Planning Commission has recommended to be updated are agritourism buildings in Oldham County. So what the Planning Commission basically did was that they determined, when is it a permitted use or a conditional use, and established some development standards for the agritourism buildings. The primary thing that's driving the updates to the zoning ordinance on this is that we want to bring everything into compliance with the state's efforts to promote agritourism throughout the state and in Oldham County, and then also to bring the standards all together with the Kentucky Building Code in terms of public safety of what you should expect with an agritourism facility in Oldham County. So the changes you see here are real similar to what we talked about in the prior section, where if you're in an agricultural or residential zoning district, we're proposing that you still have to get a conditional use from the appropriate Board of Adjustments. But if you're on office, commercial, or industrial type property and you want to do an agritourism facility, it's basically a permitted use with the same development standards that would be required with the conditional use. The one notable exception is that I think in the 2018 update of the zoning ordinance, a new zoning district was created for the Agricultural 2, which established the fact that in the Agricultural 2 zoning district, it's a permitted use because the Agricultural 2 zoning district is meant to promote agritourism facilities in Oldham County. And then the specific text is right here. Again, that table you just looked at is a summation of this. And then the red that you see is basically the same identical development standards that comply with Kentucky Building Code that we've been using in the past with conditional uses, but now we're applying them to the permitted uses also to make sure that there's not a development loophole. And the one thing that we did exempt with the agritourism facilities is here on number 4, it says that, they shall be exempt from section 280, 150, parking lot layout and design, item 2, markings, and item 3, surface and maintenance. If you're going to an agritourism facility, it's probably reasonable to expect it's not a paved parking lot or a paved parking lot with stripes for cars to park. It's probably a gravel parking lot. And we just want to make sure we have an exemption in there to say, yeah, you're allowed to have it because that's what fits in with an agritourism facility. And that is the end of the section for agritourism buildings.
Are there any questions in regard to the information presented by Mr. Fogel? Magistrate Jeffries.
Just a couple. Well, one thing for you, Judge, is as far as the public hearing part, will the folks that are here that want to speak, will they be able to speak at the end, or do we want to, if they have questions,
the
we
end.
move through it?
I think we need to go through the entire presentation.
Okay, all right. Well, I had a question on the agritourism. Anything constructed prior to December 31st, 2016 is exempt and will remain exempt in this language. Is that correct? The way I'm reading that? That's on page 7.
That's what it says.
Yes, that is correct, and that's what the ordinance says right now for anything that's a conditional use, and we would be applying that to still the conditional uses and now the newly permitted uses.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all, Judge.
Okay. Magistrate Hawkins.
Judge, will we take these up and vote on these individually at the end?
Yes.
Okay. That's my only question.
Well, no, you're able to ask your question about this section right now before we have a public hearing. It's unlikely there's going to be anybody from the public speak at the public hearing, but we are going to have one.
Yeah.
Judge, I do have one question.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Fogel, can you actually tell us what an agritourism building is? I see the definition here, but what if I didn't want to put something that big? What if I just wanted to put up a small fruit stand? And I see a section 250-210 gives the definition of agritourism building, but I guess I'm understanding exactly what it is.
The agritourism building really is established for a larger scale facility that's promoting tourism that supports agricultural efforts. In terms of like a fruit stand, that's something that's going to fall in a different portion of the zoning ordinance where someone may get a permit for a temporary shelter if they wanted to put a tent up for their seasonal produce.
That explains. Thank you.
Right. And
Okay, Magistrate Hawkins.
in the entertainment industry that we're in, we would call that entertainment. So that the wording of agritourism might be confusing. It's entertainment, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's efforts that the state has been promoting to basically help with the economic viability of farms in the state.
And that would include things like corn mazes and all of that.
Yes.
Anything like that.
All right, proceed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next section is golf driving ranges. And there's not a lot of change to the golf driving range, with the exception, we didn't have a definition for a golf course. We didn't have a definition for a golf driving range or miniature golf. We're not proposing any changes to where those particular types of facilities are allowed in Oldham County. We're defining them to say that when it's a driving range, this is where it goes. When it's a golf course, this is where it goes. And when it's miniature golf, this is where it goes. And generally speaking, golf courses, with the exception of a couple of our commercial zoning districts, require conditional uses from the Board of Adjustments. No change there. A golf driving range, which is really a commercial activity, has to be in a non-residential zoning district, which would be one of the commercials or industrial zoning districts. You can't ask for conditional use to put it in a residential area. It's a commercial activity. It would require a change of zoning if the property is not zoned commercially. And then likewise with miniature golf. It's a commercial activity. It's not appropriate to ask for a conditional use in a residential neighborhood. We did clean up our language a little bit on the lighting requirements for golf driving ranges. Basically, we were just saying, you know, your lighting shall comply and not shield onto adjoining properties. That's kind of a subjective term, but the lighting section of our zoning ordinance is very objective. It has standards that it uses to define what is acceptable lighting, what's excessive lighting, what type of lighting shields do you have to use to make sure that you're not projecting light onto adjoining properties. And then the definitions right here, where we define what a golf course is, what a golf driving range is, and then what a miniature golf is. The thing to keep in mind with all this is that the question may come in your mind, well, what about a country club? The golf course is not a country club. A country club is part of a development as it's defined in the zoning ordinance. And basically, country clubs would be a conditional use in any of our residential or agricultural zoning districts and a permitted use in any of the commercial or industrial zoning districts. And Judge, that's the end of that section.
Anyone have a question on that section? I don't think so. Move on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, school capacity standards. So what we're doing with the school capacity standards, we're creating two tools that allows the Planning Commission in partnership with the Board of Education to put some mitigation efforts in there when somebody proposes something other than just a single-family residential lot. In terms of what we're getting ready to look at, this is something that the Board of Education has adopted and been using, even though our zoning ordinance has not been brought up to date as a matter of administrative policy. Lots of credit to different people on all of these things, but particularly Amy Alvey on these school capacity standards and Michael Williams with the Board of Education, because they sit down and really went through the details of all these things. And we already had school capacity standards in our zoning ordinance. What we're doing is we're updating it to reflect that we may have more complicated development proposals than just a single-family residential lot. We may have mixed-use developments. So if you have a mixed-use development where you have land uses that aren't generating students that are going to the school, you get an allowance in the number of permits you get each year for a dwelling unit. You don't get an increase in the total number of permits, but you do get an allowance with the recognizing that, you know, if that's an office, or if that's an open space, or if that's a hospital, those uses are not generating children that will be going to the schools. So you get an allowance that incrementally increases the number of annual permits that you get each year.
Brian, is that the difference between the 125 units and the 75 units?
Is your mic on?
The 125 applies to single family. The 75 applies to multifamily, which we're getting ready to go into. But it's, Magistrate Loxton, it's all the same principle. You know, that if you have a use where you're not generating students, you get a little bit of an incremental allowance on your annual number of permits for that larger development that's more than just a single-family residence. So the 75 that you're referring to is to address when you have a large development that has multifamily in it. And what Amy and Michael had to work on was that when you have a development like that, the financing structure is different for multifamily than it is single family. That the lenders want some assurance that in a given year, you can get a certain number of permits as you're developing that multifamily part of your project. So that's where the 75 comes in.
Manager Towns.
I don't know how you build apartments with 75 units. Because they're usually even numbers.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, they had to arrive on a number, and that's a very valid point. You know, they're always built at an even number. But if you look at the way that you stage this, you could come in November if you have your construction plans approved. That's the triggering event with multifamily. You could come in November, get your 75 permits, and then come back in January and get your next 75 permits to give you an even number. But you can't outpace what this chart says, that if you think you're going to build out in 2 years, the way you work with that requirement is to stage it in terms of construction plan approval. But you're not getting an increase in the total number of apartments. You're simply getting an adjustment in your allocation of how many dwelling units you're allowed each year.
Can you
And
explain
again, it's really geared towards more complex developments. And the example I'm going to use that immediately springs to my mind, and where we go to LaGrange City Council, we'll have to talk to them about it, is the Oldham property. There you may have properties that are multifamily, single family, and non-residential. So all these measures are geared towards assisting the development of those properties.
Manager Hawkins.
Are you done? I wanted to wait until you were done with the school capacity
Yes.
standard presentation. Okay. I have a couple of questions. I was looking, you had just mentioned when you build like a hospital or office space, but I had only read open space. So is it open space and all those things you listed?
Yes, it's basically any type of use, including open space, that would not be generating students.
Okay. And when you say multi-unit, so before this, it was like if you have an apartment of 20 units, then that would be 20, it would be considered 20, not one, right?
That's correct. And this does not change that. Someone cannot, if I'm following your thinking, someone cannot build a building with 10 apartments in it and count that as one. That would be counted as 10 because it changes the language from building permits to dwelling units. That when you look at that building permit, how many dwelling units are you creating? So that's part of what the update is to take it away from building permits, to eliminate that loophole and say that it's specifically on the number of dwelling units.
Okay, so you're saying historically, a dwelling unit, if it had, say, 10 apartments for 10 different families, that was considered one dwelling unit?
If it was pulled under one building permit application, yes. And this changes that.
Okay. Why include okay, so right here I see the open space and mixed use, non-resident or non-student generating uses. So historically, when somebody has an open space, they're not given credit to have more dwelling units allowed. So this would change that.
It would not. It would not give them more dwelling units for that overall development, but it would increase their annual allocation in the number of units that they can build. It doesn't increase the total number.
Because it maxes out at 125.
That number is going to depend on what the Board of Education tells us when they run their formula, but yes, it maxes out at 125.
Okay. And this doesn't give a specific, so if you have 1 acre of open space or 1 acre of mixed use, how many more than dwelling units are you allowed for kids in the schools?
It's going to depend on the zoning district of the property.
Okay, and where's that? Where can I find that?
Well, each property in the county is zoned differently. So it's going to vary from property to property depending on what the zoning district is.
No, I'm talking about just for the open space. If it's is a residential or a P&D or whatever
Right.
it is, how many more dwelling units would one get for including 1 acre of open space? What if they have 2 acres, 5 acres?
The reason I can't just give you a simple answer is that it's going to vary from property to property depending on what the zoning is for that specific property.
If it's an R4, if it's an R3, that's going to determine the differences.
Or if it's an R2, an R2A.
It would have to be an
Or an
R2 to be, or
R4A.
P&D.
You know, the answer's going to change based upon what the underlying zoning is on that specific piece of property.
It seems like it's going to allow, as I read it, more condensed or concentrated dwelling units allowed, which then, to me, it sounds like it's going to serve the builders and the developers more than the students and the families who are in the schools.
The Board of Education doesn't agree with you in terms of the work that they put into this. And I don't know how to answer your question to change your perception there, but that's not the case.
I know the Board of Education gives us their recommendations and then we approve it. So I appreciate their, trying to probably get more students because then they can build more. The more students they have and they increase capacity, then they have the ability to build additional schools.
Right.
But I think as of now, it doesn't help the families by having those more dwelling units allowed in a more concentrated fashion. So that's just my opinion.
Okay.
Anyone else? Magistrate Jeffries.
Just see here. Where I was at. So the school board, Michael and those folks, and I know, he and Amy Alley, when she was with planning commission, worked hours and hours and
Yes.
days coming up with this formula.
Right.
And I know that multifamily was always an issue, or has been for several years, on how to be, fair but allow the school board the flexibility and at least to have an input as to. Oh, sorry. Have input as to exactly what the formula is and that kind of thing. So I think this goes a long way to help address, some of that concern. And I think at least we get it on paper now that the commission will have something to look at when they make these decisions on these larger developments and these mixed-use developments, as you pointed out.
Right. And that's the intent of it. And in talking to Amy, again, she can kind of give me the Reader's Digest version of all the work that went into that with Michael, but it's really an encyclopedia of work. They did a lot of work to try to safeguard just what Magistrate Jeffries is talking about.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Next item.
And the last one are solar energy systems. So we have created or proposing to create a new section of the zoning ordinance to address solar energy systems because right now the ordinance has nothing. We're kind of at the mercy of what the state regulations might say in terms of siting. And also the zoning ordinance, because as it is right now, a solar energy system or solar panels, I'm going to use plain language there unless you guys say no, switch back and forth. But the solar panels, we don't have any siting or regulation standards for them. So what the study review committee did, and they had people come in and meet with them, is that they looked at a model ordinance that's in compliance with Kentucky revised statutes to make sure we weren't creating a standard that would run afoul of state law. And if the state law were more restrictive or less restrictive than what we wanted to do. Basically, you would have to go with the state law because we're starting to deal with things that are regulated by the Public Service Commission. What we've done with this, in addition to putting some local requirements in there in terms of siting and setback, is to make sure that what we're putting together is meant to supplement any state or federal regulations that would address environmental concerns. And I know those are out there from talking to you all. And I honestly tried to come up with a simple answer on how to address that to y'all's comfort level by looking at EPA, by looking at the state divisions that deal with that. And it's so complex and requires so much technical expertise. That's why we rely on the state and federal regulations to address anything that might be an environmental concern. Now, part of what I did different with this that I want to go over real quick are these questions and concerns that have been raised to hopefully proactively answer some questions. You know, we've had the question raised to us, where did you guys come up with this from? And it's the Kentucky Model Solar Zoning Ordinance that, again, it's model because it fits hand in glove with any of the Kentucky revised statutes to make sure we're in compliance with that. The question's been raised that in the ordinance, when it says that you need planning commission approval, what does that mean? It basically means you have to go to the planning commission and get their approval for the siting of a solar energy system or solar panels when it is ground mounted for anything that's larger than 2,500 square feet in size. And when I look at the review process for that, it's almost a mirror image of what applicants have to do when they want to put in a cell phone tower in the county. Same notification processes, same hearing process, kind of the same technical standards, and that's in our zoning ordinance, and it's been working well, and it complies with the state statutes. The question's been raised, you know, how are solar panels decommissioned? There are environmental laws that address that, but what we have specifically in this is that when it's a ground-mounted solar panel system that's in a residence, and that means it's smaller than 2,500 square feet in size, that when it's stopped being used, it has to be taken off the property, all its support poles, off the property within 6 months, and the ground has to be restored back to its natural grade. And then for the ones that are larger than 2,500 square feet, we refer to those as non-residential ground mounted, that within 12 months of when it's no longer producing energy, it has to be starting to be dismantled, and all that work has to be done within 6 months. We've had the question raised of, can solar panels exceed the height of a residence's roof? And the answer is no. The zoning ordinance specifically says a rooftop solar energy system shall be positioned on the roof so as not to extend above or beyond the edge of any ridge, hip, valley, or eave, ... It talks about it more. But it also says in here, it might be reasonable to expect that those solar panels may not be inches from the surface of the roof. And the reason that's in the model ordinance and why we want it here is that the solar companies use software to calculate what's the angle of the solar panel to maximize your energy output. And if you have a house that has a lower pitched roof, it may be required to accommodate the sun's angle and intensity that you've got to put it more than just a few inches from the surface of the roof. And then we had the question about, well, what's to keep someone from maxing out solar panels on their roof with the ground mounted at their house because they want to create cash and have revenue coming into them. And the Net Metering Act of 2020 basically said, nuh-uh, guys, you can't do that. And they did that through the Public Service Commission with State Senate Bill 100, where it basically said that when you have a solar panel on your property, you're selling it back to the utility company. You're getting a credit on your bill that applies to your bill in future bills when it's cloudy or it's January. And if for some reason you have net credits on your bill, when you close that account, when you sell your property and the next person moves in, that credit goes away. You don't get a cash payout for it. It's simply just a one-to-one credit on your electric bill.
Brian, can I ask a question? Since we're on residential versus commercial also.
Mike's not on.
I just have sorry. I just have a question. Decommission on a commercial site, they're putting up a bond. How are you going to regulate, and again, this is brand new technology, I understand, and you're doing a great job so far on doing this, but if let's say you had a hailstorm and a house is for sale and it sells, and that solar panel's no good anymore because of that, how is the county going to regulate to make sure that that panel is disposed of properly on a residential top of a roof? You know, is it going to go from the previous owner? Is it going to go to the new owner? Well, I know you have to put up bonds on a commercial.
Right.
Will there be anything that you put up on a residential side? So in case you do get hail damage and something happens to that and people just walk away from it?
Right. I can't answer the real estate question in terms of the future buyer. You know, are they buying that liability because you're getting into real estate law there? But in terms of the removal of those solar panels and the decommissioning of them and compliance with environmental regulations, it's basically falling to the solar company that's in a contractual arrangement with the home buyer who said, I want to spend this money on having these solar panels put on my roof.
Okay.
And it's an important issue, but it's one that really falls outside of the zoning ordinance, and it's addressed by the contractual agreements between the solar company and the home buyer and the state and environmental laws.
Are you done with your presentation?
I've got a question.
I can do whatever. Questions or...
I've got a
or-
question on the solar before you get away from it.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. Well, are you finished with what you wanted to present before
I was going to go
answering
through a few
questions?
more things and then the actual ordinance, which
Yeah,
may
let's hear it.
answer your question.
Right. Let's hear it.
Okay. All right. So, you know, here's just a copy of the cover letter from the Kentucky Resources Council that says, you know, they've put together this model ordinance for use by local governments to help facilitate the appropriate siting, design, construction, installation, and decommissioning of solar energy systems in a predictable manner, and that the model ordinance is based on a review of best practices, and it's tailored to meet with Kentucky state laws to make sure that it meets that. And I've got the whole ordinance on disc if you all wanted to see it, but then the next page is just basically the first page of the model ordinance. And then just a couple quick pictures. This would be an example of a roof-mounted solar system. We see those on houses. This is an integrated solar system where basically it's the shingles of the roof. It's not just something that's on a metal frame. It's the actual shingles of the roof. The ground mounted, if someone wants to do a ground mounted residential, has to be smaller than 2,500 square feet in size, but then it's also, as we get into the ordinance, restricted by 25% of the footprint of the house. So if you have I got to keep the math simple. If you have a 1,000 square foot house, you can have 250 square feet of solar panels. For ground mounted. On your roof, it's, you know, on whatever coverage you want on the roof. And then this would be an example if a utility came in and said that they wanted to put in a large scale, what I call solar farm. This is the actual ordinance, and if you guys want to stop at particular points, ask questions, we can, but what we've done is that we've used the definitions from the Kentucky model ordinance for that. And then to me, this is just golden right here in terms of addressing the environmental and decommissioning. You know, Solar energy systems shall comply with all applicable federal, state, local laws, regulations, and permitting and other requirements in applicable building, fire, electrical, and plumbing codes. The definitions for the different types of things that are pertinent to solar systems. Here, when they are a permitted use, and by permitted use, you're required to come in, get an electrical and building permit. I understand that the fiscal court changed our permitting process the fall of last year to help address this. And then if it's not just something you get a building permit for, you have to go to the planning commission to get their approval. Then there are some general requirements for rooftop solar systems and integrated general requirements for the residential ground mounted. And then where we put some, local input in there was that originally you could put a ground mounted solar system on your residence 5 feet from any side or rear property line. And to make it fit what we want in Oldham County, we basically came up with a stair step here where if you're 1 acre or less, it can't be any closer than 25 feet to any side or rear property line. If you're 1 to 3 acres, it can't be any closer than 50 feet. And if you're on 3 acres or larger, it can't be any closer than 100 feet. And then the decommissioning standard. And then the next section where it starts to get into the non-residential, and that would be the larger users. If a public utility came in and said they were interested in locating one in Oldham County, it would require planning commission approval. And more of those standards, what the permitting application requirements are, and this basically complies with state statutes. And then what our public notice and public comment procedure is, and this really closely mirrors what we do for telecommunication towers and cell phone antennas. And Judge,
All right.
that's the end of
Okay.
that section.
Okay. Does anyone have, we can ask questions here now, and then we'll have our public hearing if we need. All right, Matt Shaddai, I believe, was spoken.
Yeah, I understand that, you've got the residential home-mounted or building-mounted systems that you all are taking into consideration the setback from the side of the roof, and then the snow load and all that kind of stuff. That's all been figured into it, I understand. I believe there's even something about how you can get it has to be so far from the edge of the roof because of if there's a fire, and the firefighters have to have a certain amount of clear passage to get through. So all that's well and good. And of course, then the next thing is when one of the system fails. I own the house. If the system's failed, you want to buy my house. Okay, well, of course, the rule says it's got to be decommissioned. Well, I'm just not going to do it. If you want to decommission it, you decommission it. My question is, how are you going to, not you or the planning, planning development downstairs, how are we going to get people to actually do this? Because we've got people that move into subdivisions, and the first thing they do is they plant a bunch of bushes right in the center of a easement, a drainage easement. And people say, well, my water won't drain in my yard. Well, idiots, you planted bushes right in the middle of the ditch. That's why I don't. So how are you all going to enforce that? Or are you going to leave it? Are you going to leave it up to the real estate people to talk about prior existing conditions?
It's going to be that last scenario you just talked about. That it's going to be a contractual agreement between the solar company, the existing homeowner, and the future home buyer.
So they would have to tell. They're supposed to be what's the right word, Chris, or what's the right term? Pre-existing conditions, or
It would have to be on a disclosure statement of property conditions.
yeah, it would be on a disclosure statement that it's defective, or so and then they would have to make an agreement between the buyer and the seller who's going to pay to get it taken off.
That's correct. And I guess, and I don't know if this is a apples to apples comparison, but the one that pops in my mind is that If someone's buying a home and the HVA system is on the blink and it's out of date, well, they may say, I'll purchase this house, but you're going to give me a dollar allowance for the replacement of the HVA system. You know, that it's going to probably be something similar to that.
Well, you'd have an inspector come in and check it and see. They don't have home inspections, but then again, I understand that some people, they don't want a home inspection. They'll take it. There's some kind of agreement between the buyer and the seller. So I'm just concerned about who's going to end up doing these, because there's going to be some hard cases out there that someone's going to say, well, no one told me, that kind of attitude. And, okay.
I've thought of a solution to that.
Magistrate Hounds.
Question I have is that when I look at, and I don't know much about solar, I know it's the latest and greatest thing, but when we talk about 250 square feet, is that a number, where did we come up with that number on a 1,000 square foot house? Because I guess my question is 250 square feet worth putting in to power that 1,000 square foot house?
Yes, probably not, but that would be a question that the solar company would have to answer. And I was using that as an example to explain that the overall size of a ground-mounted solar system at a residence is directly tied proportionally to the footprint size of the house. So someone can't have a 1,000 square foot house and say, well, I'm going to put 2,500 square feet of solar panels in my yard. It's proportionally tied to the size of the house. And I do want to correct myself on my math. It should be 50% proportion, not 25%.
Okay, but, and again, I don't know anything about solar, and maybe you do, maybe you don't, but I mean, is 500 square feet going to power a 1,000 square foot house?
I don't know the answer to that.
I guess
Depends on what you're growing in your basement.
What's that? It's a slab, Kevin. I don't have a basement. I guess the question is, there's no point in putting in, I mean, it's gotta make sense that what we do is that the math works out that if it takes, and I'm making up numbers because I don't know, if it's 500 square feet will power a 1,000 square foot home with basic needs, Magistrate Woosley, then it should be fine. But if you need 600 square feet,
You have the option of putting it on your roof to get the 600.
Yeah, but that's the problem, though. As I understand it, some of the roof lines, you can't change the roof line to put the solar on it. But if you have flat ground, then you can angle the solar panels and you can get them set so that you can get the biggest bang for your buck. People that are doing this to get a reduced or have no electric bill. I mean, and with some of the funding that's out there now, apparently, you can get pretty doggone close to that every month.
Right. It really, the assurance you can have, whether it gives you the assurance that you want or not, is that the size of the ground-mounted solar panels are proportionally tied to the size of the house. You know, so it may be that if someone has a smaller house and they want to put solar panels in and that doesn't generate enough electricity to make the economics work, when they meet with the solar company is probably going to say the economics don't work, or the homeowner is going to look at it and say, yeah, it's a good idea, but the economics don't work.
Okay, so here's where I'm going. You've walked right into the trap, is then you're basically pushing out the people that have a smaller home not to have solar panels if they want them.
On the ground. They could put the solar panels on the roof.
But I'd have probably less space on my roof if I've got a pitched roof. I'd have to do the math, but I don't think you could get enough solar panels on the roof.
It depends on how big your yard is, too.
And that would take you to the next level. Should we be putting formulation?
Let's maintain, please raise your hand and I'll call on you to speak.
I mean, I guess
I see that.
the problem is that we're going to regulate by the size of the house how much solar panels you can put up. If you've got the yard space, as I understand it, you want to put the solar panels in to power the house or to get to a certain percentage. And again, I'm playing devil's advocate here, but if we restrict it, then you're saying that a person who has a 1,000 square foot house can't put in solar panels to power their home, but a person who has a 2,500 square foot house now has enough square footage in their home to have enough footprint to power their home and have ground mounted solar.
But we're really speculating on whether or not that's enough solar panels to generate for their electric needs.
I agree, but I mean, if we build the ordinance this way, then we're forcing that.
Well, but the ordinance is built to provide protections to the adjoining property owners with some assurance that the neighbor next door is going to cover their entire backyard with solar panels, that there's some restriction on the amount of footprint that it can occupy.
Okay.
Magistrate Woosley thinks he can answer that question.
I'm on Google, and for a typical 1,000 square foot American home uses 300 to 400 kilowatts per month, and that's about 5 to 6 regular size panels, 375 watt panels.
So what's the size of that, though?
They
What's the
are,
square footage of that? Because again, we're going into property rights here, folks. You've got, if I own a piece of property, it's my piece of property to pseudo do with it as I wish. I'm not trying to, but are we tying the hands of a smaller party? We're only allowing the larger homes to have solar panels.
Question can't be answered right this minute, maybe, I don't know. Magistrate Jeffries was next.
All right, just a couple questions, Brian. Can ground-mounted solar panels be installed over lateral field in a backyard?
You can't build a garage over a lateral field, so I think it's probably reasonable to expect that you can't build solar panels that may compromise the integrity of the lateral fields. I would say the answer is probably no.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I just
Right.
wanted to get clarification on that. And on page 16, I guess, of the document, under number 5, height requirements, it says ground-mounted solar systems shall not exceed 20 feet in height as measured from the highest natural grade below each solar panel. So the height restriction includes any storage, batteries, antennas, et cetera. So the way I'm reading this, you could put ground-mounted solar panels in your backyard 20 foot tall. Is that 20 foot high?
At its highest point, because in all likelihood, just looking at the pictures of the ground mounted, is that they're always tilted to capture the sun's rays. So at the highest point, they could not exceed 20 feet.
Right, but that's my concern, is if you got, solar panels in your backyard, and even with the setbacks of, say 25 feet on the acre or whatever, and you've got a panel 20 feet up in the air, that still could be somewhat, neighbors might have a problem with that, with the height of that solar panel at 20 feet. Is there a reason that they need to be 20 feet in the air?
I don't know a definite answer to that, other than that number came from the model solar ordinance, who looked at, what standards do you need to make these things work?
Well, I've just got a little concern about, sticking up an array of solar panels 20 feet up in the air, that your neighbor might have to look into or whatever, that high up.
Right.
Where they're lower, you don't have that, where the eye level and, whatever. So that would be my concern on that.
Magistrate Tice.
In regards to what Magistrate Hounds was talking about, if I was buying a house and a heat cool guy was putting in a furnace for my house, I would have no more clue, the BTUs, than I would the amount of solar panels. I think we don't need to be concerned with that, because the experts that will buy that, install that in the house, will be guaranteeing that customer, which is the homeowner, on that. I think where we are engaged is in neighborhoods and what our setbacks and what our appearance is going to be as this changes the neighborhood. I mean, we will have, in fact, our subdivision, I know of one that's got the solar panels already on the roof. To me, it's not obtrusive. It's, and some people say this will be a fad. I think that this is a legitimate, ongoing, futuristic, just like all the money they're putting in the batteries for cars. So I think it's that for us to be doing it is where we're leading down, but we can't say how big will have to be on that house, the angle and the trees, vegetation. There's so many things that variable that we cannot protect the homeowner. He needs to, whenever he gets that, go to an expert to give him the specifications. But that will do it. It's just like I'm going to put shingles on my house, but they're 25 years old, but because of vegetation, they only lasted, 10.
But the problem is that I understand what we're trying to do, but I guess the issue is you're basically going to say that some people, because of the size of their home, have the rights to have solar panels, and some people, because the size of their home, can't have solar panels.
No, we're saying you can have solar panels if you want them.
I know, but okay, if I have 1,000 square foot home, and let's just use the 500 square feet, okay? But we got to have a number, right? So this person can only have 500 square feet. On a 500 square foot of solar panels, it's not advantageous for them to put the solar panels in because it won't power the house. The end game is not to power 50% of the home. The end game is to power 100% of the home. So that person, let's just say hypothetically, they need 600 square feet. But our ordinance won't allow them to have the 600 square feet. So we're not allowing them the same benefit as a person who has a 2,500 square foot home who can get.
Well, if they have to come to the Board of Adjustments.
They would. They would have the option of going to the Board of Adjustments, and
I guess what I'm saying though is that when we create the ordinance, we should make sure that why would we want to force people to come to the Board of Adjustments every time to get the information? If we set the ordinance out to begin with correctly, then you're going to reduce the number of cases that come before the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, right?
Are there going to be that many 1,000-foot homes in Oldham County that are going to want to install solar?
I don't know, Judge, not my prerogative, but I mean, I'm saying that the playing field should be the same all the way across the board.
Oh, it's the whole, nothing's the same playing field. We're trying to make it the best we can, but there's nothing that's going to be the same playing field. It just, that's not reality.
Oh,
Magistrate Hawkins.
I think that's, Magistrate Hounds, I think that's assuming that we know how much electricity somebody uses who lives in a 1,000 square foot house versus the electricity one uses in a 2,500 square foot house. That's not, we can't say that. We can't determine that. And then we can't base this ordinance on how much electricity various people use.
I'm sure there's a number that the solar people have that say, if you have this size house, this is how many square feet of solar panels we have. And I'm saying that we need to make sure we look at that number so we don't put an ordinance out day one that's going to cause people to come to adjustments and appeals. Maybe it's not 1,000 square feet. Maybe it's 2,500. Maybe we're wrong for 2,500 square feet. I don't know. I didn't even think about this when I was reading until you went through the process and started talking about the numbers.
Right.
Or I would have brought this to your attention before we could have done that research.
The other thing that I have learned just in reading on this, because it's new to me, that's why the study review committee started in November 2020 looking at this stuff, is that the technology keeps changing.
Oh, yeah,
That it's
agreed.
it's getting smaller and smaller in size and more efficient. This ordinance is meant to address trying to minimize the impact on the neighbor, which when you get down to it is a lot of what the zoning ordinance is to provide, some assurance to the adjoiners that what's going on next door is within the range of normal.
And can't we take the point of view that we've got to start somewhere? We've looked at model ordinances, put together something based on them. If we have to come back in a year and make a mid-course correction because we've got 15 people who have applied to the Board of Adjustments for a problem, then we can do it.
No, I understand. I'm just bringing up the point. I think we're on the same.
I don't think we can figure out every angle before we start.
No, and we have created some ordinances that we've had to change.
Well, that's what feedback is about.
Yeah.
Judge, I wasn't done. May I continue? Okay. I had I feel like an answer to Magistrate Logsden's question, because I had that same question. And what if we required that the solar panels or the SES has a title to it. And so if it should become, and I think I brought this up to you, if it should become where it's required to be decommissioned via hail or somebody's moving or damage or they just don't want it anymore, then that title would follow that owner. Or if a new homeowner doesn't want the ground-mounted solar system in the backyard. And so then the original owner would have that original title, and then she or he would have to be required to decommission it and then get their name removed from the title, or just then relinquish the title after it's decommissioned and disposed of.
We do that now with swing sets, trampolines, outbuildings.
And then my third point was the same as Magistrate Jeffries. When you, and I wonder if you could show that, Brian, the picture of that man who looked like he was about 6 feet tall, and it appeared as though he was being crushed by the ground mountain system. I think 20 feet is entirely too tall. I wonder, could you go back to that slide by chance? It was probably 5 before this, or 6 or 7. Right there.
Oh, right there.
See, those men are probably over 6 feet tall, and that's quite tall. I can't even imagine 20 feet. And I was kind of looking at this thinking 20 feet, but then seeing the grown men standing under it, I think it should be 10 feet max, or maybe even less if everybody else is in agreement with that. Seeing it in a picture form kind of puts it in our face a little bit more. What's that?
Doesn't it have to be at an angle for it to work with the
Yes.
sun?
Yes.
Well, yeah, it has to be at an angle, but look at the back. What it's proposed is that the back, see where their heads are dunking underneath of it? Saying that could be 20 feet. That would be higher than that tree in the back. It'd be so obnoxious for a neighborhood.
You made a comment about decommissioning them.
Yeah.
When a real estate agent, when we sell a house, there's been times where people say, I don't want the swing set. So we write the contract and we say, swing set must be removed prior to closing, or outbuilding must be moved prior to closing. So an agent could do this, real estate agent could do the same thing with the solar panels. That may take care of what you're talking about if they need to be decommissioned. That does happen.
Probably, yeah.
Magistrate Jeffries.
Yes, I don't very often disagree with Magistrate Hounds, but I think on that concern about, the folks that, they have to come back to Board of Adjustments or, to ask for it. That's why Board of Adjustments is there. We can't, as this, as the legislative body or planning commission or whatever, I don't think can anticipate everything that we have to think about or whatever. So I think Board of Adjustments is the venue, and if we need to 6 months or a year from now come back and adjust this, we certainly have that opportunity. So, I don't think we can just continue to stir the pot and come up with the absolute best solution. I think we have to do what we think is best for the overall county. But like I say, I don't disagree with Magistrate Hounds very often, but I think I do disagree with him on that. And I would agree with Stephanie on this 20 feet. I think that's too high or too tall for those rear yard ground-mounted residential solar panels.
Okay.
All right.
One other.
Okay, Magistrate Woosley.
Mr. Fogel, I heard you say the height line of the panels couldn't stick up higher than the ridge line of the roof. But then I read it can stick up 5 feet. So which one is that?
Yeah, it's actually both, Magistrate Woosley. It's just that if they need to angle the solar panel to capture the sun's rays,
Right.
they have to stop before they hit the top of the roof. So, aesthetically, you're not looking at solar panels sticking up over the top of the roof.
Oh, are you talking about a lower roof?
Yeah, if it's
Okay.
if it's a lower roof, they may have to do something other than just making it to where it's a few inches off of the roof. They may have to angle it, and that height cannot exceed 5 feet. But then there's also that assurance in here that when you get up to the top of the roof, the solar panels cannot not exceed the ridge line of the roof. And that comes from the model ordinance also.
I'm confused on that statement. Say
Okay.
it one more time.
All right.
The solar panel cannot,
I'm going to
on
do
a level plane, cannot stick up
actually,
higher than the
right.
crown of the house, top of the house.
It's right here. Can
What page we on?
rooftop solar panels Rooftop solar panels can have a height of up to 5 feet. Can they extend beyond the roof line? And the answer is no.
You can have it sticking up 5 foot off the roof.
Right.
But it's got to be shifted down so it doesn't go.
That's
now
correct.
I got you. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Yes, thank you.
All right, let's take
I
a break
couldn't get that either. I was having
here
trouble
now. And, this we announced was a public hearing. Is there anybody here among the group present who would like to speak for or against solar panels? All right, we have one individual. You want to raise your right hand, please? All right, you swear to tell the truth, the entire truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. All right, please come forward, and you are a proponent or opponent or commentator.
Neither. Actually, I'm a proponent for what I've been hearing today, but I have a suggestion regarding the way it's worded. So the issue that I have with the solar panels is how they are. I'm James Allen, 1416 Oldham View, if you missed me yet. How the people who are proposing the panels get to notify the individuals. There's a statement here in section 335080, item 1. It says, a statement that every person who, according to the records of the property evaluation administrator, owns property within 500 feet of the proposed SES or has property contingent to the site, and blah, 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 blah. Very often, and I'm speaking for Crystal Lake, we are not actually privy to what's going on around the neighborhood. And if this system if a large system went up within 500 feet of one of our neighbors, it could actually affect the property value of the entire subdivision. So I had talked to Jim Urban about this several times over the last couple of years about notifications. And I was told that it was very difficult for you guys to notify HOAs and clubs and stuff like that because the information is not really available and it's often out of date. Now, I get that. But what I've proposed here as a suggestion is that if you included having the applicant do the research for incorporated subdivisions or incorporated clubs, then actually you could go to the Secretary of State's webpage and look them up real quick and tell you whether the information, get the contact information, and then send a notice to that organization. And that would be the responsibility of the applicant, not of the county. So I was just kind of suggesting a compromise in trying to make sure that the subdivisions and clubs like ours get notifications for projects like this, and do with it what you will.
All right, thank you, Jim. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in relation to the ordinance, proposed ordinance? Okay, seeing, pardon? Well, the entire thing. Okay, come on back. Looks like
My memory's really bad.
you came prepared here.
Well, I tried. Okay, if it pleases, I've been working on this just for a few hours or so over the weekend, and some of what I'm going to tell you next has already been explained to me by Brian, but if you wouldn't mind, would you come up? We're going to do this together because I'm going to tell you what my concern was. He's going to tell you what the answer is, and then I'm going to the purpose of this is to educate on my concerns so that you can consider it in your deliberations. So this is regarding the definition of private club in the ordinance as one of the first things we went over today. And it says that a private club is a building or property for the exclusive use of members, by members and their guests for social education, cultural activities, or cultural activities. The facility can also include recreational features such as swimming pools, tennis courts, blah, 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 everything except it excludes golf courses. If that were the definition that is being applied to the entire ordinance, which it is, that would mean that Crystal Lake, that has a clubhouse and boat launch and basketball court, would be a club. Now, you've explained earlier today that we're basically grandfathered in, right? So this change in ordinance doesn't really affect us, but I just wanted you to be aware that the definition of the club is extremely broad, and it would seem to me that in the proposal that probably no longer relevant. I was suggesting that they also exclude clubs where the members of the club are only the residents of that subdivision, as opposed to a club where you could just, pay your membership fee and belong to that private club. Again, I'm not sure if that's necessary. You want to speak on that part?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate Jim and actually anyone who comes in to ask the question because it makes us think.
And he gave up his lunch hour to do that.
And specifically, I mean, since 1966, KRS 100, which